Sunshine Coast. Time right now to dive into the archives with Bachelor woman Rose Barrowcliffe. She's the First Nations advisor at Queensland State Archives. Nara, Rose.
Nara, how you doing?
I'm good. Now, listeners might have caught something pretty interesting at Caloundra Regional Gallery over the weekend. What was happening there?
So Melissa Stannard was there giving an artist talk. She's a Sunshine Coast-based artist. She's based in Newmundi, First Nations artist, and she's Gamilaroi heritage. And she does some really amazing work that's based on archival records. So she was there talking about it at the gallery on the weekend.
Oh, so archival records. So how does that work?
Melissa has she has a unique or somewhat unique history in that she was raised in out-of-home care, and then she went to try and understand her family history, for her own personal history and then her family history. So to do that, she went to the archives to look for the records. And then being an artist, she tried to process the information that she found in the archives through her creative practice. So she talks a bit about how the records they're one aspect of identity, but they're never a complete picture. So she uses her creative practice to sort of piece together, but also build an identity around those records. So it's a really interesting entry point to archival research. And it's a way that I think people who don't necessarily have the time to go to the archives themselves can also engage with the archive through these artworks.
And really interesting because she makes jewellery as well, doesn't she?
She does, yeah. So she is a multimedia artist, or a mixed media artist, I think is the correct term. And what she does is she uses all these different forms to pull together. So she might use archival photographs, and then she prints them onto linens, and then she might use jewelry to tell other pictures, or she uses them often as a way, like a soothing technique, when she talks about the impacts of this disconnection that she felt and the process that, there can be quite a lot of trauma involved in archival research, particularly if you've had a difficult family history. But Melissa uses the jewelry as a way to soothe, so you can play with her jewelry as you're talking and that sort of thing. So it's very unique art. So she's exhibited at Queensland State Archives before as well. So we do that kind of full circle experience where we have artists come in, use the records, interpret the records, and then bring them back to the archive, or the creative artifact back to the archive, so people can see what is in there without necessarily having to go through the records themselves.
Yeah, and a different way of accessing that information, as you say, for some people. Some people don't want to sit there and read lots of archives to find it, but doing it through art is a really incredible way for other people to hear those stories, but also for people like artists to be able to express what they're feeling and their trauma. Is it quite common, this kind of artistic response to trauma that you've seen?
Yeah, I think it is. And there's another very well-known Queensland artist, Judy Watson, who also works with archival records and is currently exhibiting at Queensland State Archives. So it's something we're seeing increasingly, and certainly at Queensland State Archives we are encouraging and would like to support people to interact and interpret the records in that way that makes meaning of them. And it's something that I can see will be increasingly important with the truth-telling journey in Queensland, because as you say, not everyone's going to be able to sit down and read an archival record, but they might feel more comfortable going to the local gallery, or there's other indirect channels as well, like reading a book from some of the historians that research there, or watching a documentary series like Australian Wars. So all these methods of creative practice and interpretation are really, really important to getting archival records out there to the broader audience.
And that Judy's exhibition, that's happening at the moment at Queensland State Archives, is that right?
It is, yeah. It's on at Runcorn at the moment, which is where Queensland State Archives are located, just on the south side of Brisbane. So that's on till the end of February. If people are in the area, they're certainly welcome to come and view that as well.
Good to know. Rose, thank you so much for the chat this morning.
Thanks, Sarah.
Rose Barrowcliffe, Bachelor woman and First Nations advisor at Queensland State Archives.